Time now for our PIX panel. Joining me today, PIX Zeldin political reporter Ayana and executive editor at Gotham Gazette, Ben Max. Good to have you both here today, the final show before the big election day. So, let's begin with the biggest race in our area, New York governor, right? Both Lee Zeldin and Kathy Hochul stepping up their campaigning in the last days of the election. Hochul remaining confident, Zeldin believing, though, he's going to pull off a surprise to people on election night. So let's begin with you, Ayana, first and foremost. There's been a shift, really, in how Governor Kathy Hochul has strategized. It has been a lot more boots on the ground in the final weeks. Have you noticed the change?
I've certainly noticed the change, but I will say even though there are more boots on the ground, Kathy Hochul has had some decent-sized rallies with, the vice president, with Hillary Clinton, with the, so many elected leaders. But there's still not these large-scale rallies that we're seeing Lee Zeldin hold throughout New York City, also upstate. So Kathy Hochul, aside from the rally with the vice president, her events have still been smaller, but she is certainly boots on the ground, going to subway stations. She greeted MTA workers, bus drivers, and train conductors as they were going out on their shifts. But we haven't seen these massive get-out-the-vote Democratic rallies with Kathy Hochul, but she is getting out there, certainly.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, Ben, a shift from the Rose Garden strategy. New York is a deeply blue state and in trouble of losing a few things here. So what have you noticed? You recently did an interesting interview on your podcast, Max Politics, and how gubernatorial elections are won and lost, really. Hasn't been 20 years since a Republican won the governor's office. Can you tell us some takeaways from your conversation?
Sure. Bruce Jury knows all the numbers, and he joined me this week on the show to talk about this. A few of the big takeaways are this. One is what you were just getting at, which is the enormous importance of turning out the base. Now, this is true for Zeldin and for Hochul, but it's more of a question mark for Hochul because in non-presidential years, Democratic turnout can often be quite low. So there are big questions about whether she can turn out the base, especially in New York City, where she's never been at the top of the ticket before. Then it moves to the suburbs and upstate, and the suburbs are really perhaps the key question of this race, like so many statewide races come down to. Lee Zeldin being from Long Island seems to have some advantages there, but the big question is how will Hochul either hold her own or keep the margin close in the suburbs, because upstate Republicans typically do fairly well. And one last note on that, she has some advantages being from upstate.
Right.
So if she can juice the New York City turnout, hold her own in the suburbs, she might be okay. And the last point I'll make is this, the gender gap. We've seen in polling some big advantages among men for Zeldin and women for Hochul. Obviously, the issue of abortion rights has become front and center in this election and others. And that is one of the key questions going into this race, is whether especially suburban and upstate women will wind up favoring Hochul in this race.
Yeah, very interesting conversation. That's on the governor's race, and we'll keep a very close eye on election night. But I do want to talk about some other key races, because throughout the past few weeks, we've done some race profiles on key contests in our area, which can, once again, control the House. And this is very interesting for Democrats who assumed they would win the Democratic seats here in New York, again, because it's a deeply blue state. Now there are some seats that are up for grabs. And I wanted to get your final thoughts on them. So, Ayana, let me begin with you first on the Max Rose versus Nicole Malliotakis.
This has certainly been a bitter rematch. 2 years ago, Nicole Malliotakis booted Max Rose out of Congress. Now Max Rose is looking to boot Nicole Malliotakis out of Congress. But keep in mind, this district includes one of the few Republican strongholds here in New York City. The district is Staten Island and Southern Brooklyn. And Nicole Malliotakis is popular in this district. Whenever we're out in Staten Island, South Brooklyn, covering a Malliotakis event, it seems like she really has support of the voters. People know her. They recognize her. It seems like they feel she is approachable. There hasn't been a whole lot of polling in this race, but a Siena poll did put Max Rose behind by about 6 percentage points last month. So it seems like Max Rose certainly has some ground to gain, but at this point, Nicole Malliotakis appears to have the momentum.
Yeah, and there's a whole issue of Sean Patrick Maloney versus Mike Lawler. Very interesting, because Sean Patrick Maloney is a stronghold in the Democrat. He really is the person who goes out and campaigns for Democrats, try to hold on to those seats. And voter turnout, once again, one of the issues in that specific race that's going to play a factor, right, Ben?
Oh, absolutely. And I think there's a series of Hudson Valley races. That's the most prominent one because Sean Patrick Maloney is the DCCC chair. But there's a series of Hudson Valley races that are going to be pivotal for New York and will relate to the statewide races like governor, but also control of Congress nationwide. And that is among the harbingers of whether this is a huge Republican wave year or if maybe Republicans pick off some seats as they're favored to do, but it's not an enormous wave.
Okay, and I want to focus on New Jersey for a second as well. Tom Malinowski versus Tom Keene Jr. hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention, but there's certainly Malinowski is not favored to win as much as he thought he was going into this race, Ayana.
Yeah, Malinowski is certainly in trouble, and we're beginning to see political observers across the country zone in and focus on this race. And Dan, right now the numbers are so close that it's tough to say who might appear ahead, and we may not even know who the winner is on election night because it may come down to, counting of those absentee ballots. But this is certainly a close race, a toss-up in New Jersey, which is typically a blue state.
Moving to more of the national stage here in the national picture on election night or in the days after, really, Ben. What do you expect? Because like you said, it's whoever's in control of the White House, it is expected the other party will gain some momentum. But the Democrats, from what we were talking to with our analysts, may have struggled on some key issues on what they campaigned on. What do you think going into Election Day?
I think it's really remarkable that election after election, there's just so many questions about how Democratic strategy is formulated and executed and how they are either pushing back on Republican attacks on certain issues, like we've seen on the issue of crime and on inflation, or going on the offense about some of their accomplishments, or at least perceived accomplishments. And we're seeing that again, and there's going to be a lot of Monday morning or Wednesday morning quarterbacking, so to speak. But I think right now we're seeing a year that is expected to be Republican and likely will be. It's a matter of degree and whether Democrats can potentially pick off some seats where the issue of abortion especially has become so front and center that it overtakes some of the other concerns.
Ayana, final thoughts, 10 seconds.
No, I certainly agree with Ben. I think the House will certainly go to Republicans. Earlier this week, Chuck Schumer said he believes that Democrats still have a chance to maintain control of the Senate, but it's still yet to be seen. So many races are really going to come down to the wire, and that's why Democrats are bringing out the big names. Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, all hitting the campaign trail because they are desperately trying to hold on to that power.
All right, to be continued. We'll see. We'll talk to you on Wednesday morning and find out. Ayana, Ben, good to have you here. We'll be right back.